the situation was not great, but it's more just like economically depressed, not that
Well,
not flourishing, but not really
look,
like
look,
bad.
you have to say that it's really bad, because if the founding narrative of your society is that of suffering and
Well,
of
no,
being
no,
a
no. I'm not asking. I'm not asking like Gaza or Hamas. I'm asking you, like, how would you characterize it?
No, I would characterize this as poor, right? I would really not want to live in Egypt, right? Okay, but I'm just saying that it's like, I guess I've kind of snuck a little bit in there. That's like, there are other places that if you were to want to say, well, because they're so poor and their lives are so terrible, there are more places with pretty terrible lives, like
Yeah, I mean,
So the problem is the narrative. The problem is like the foundational narrative of the society, of like the reason why we're poor is because these people stole from us and they're living on our land. For example, I told you about this council that met about, well, what are we going to do with the Jews after we've done freeing Palestine, which will obviously happen in the next couple of years. Like that's how they saw it, like a year or two ago. They foresaw this, right? They foresaw this, but they thought they would win. So
just because we're doing this on the internet, I happen to have my computer in front of me. I was able to actually just quickly Google those things, and it looks like the Egypt unemployment rate something like 6.5%, maybe 6.7%, and the Gaza unemployment rate in like 2013 was like 80%.
That has to be fabricated. I have to like, okay, I grant you that I will not argue that the Gaza unemployment rate has to be higher than Egypt's for sure, but that has to be fabricated. Like that has to be manipulated somehow. But again, I would agree with you that it has a high unemployment, stuff like that. I would also, it would also not surprise me.
Pretty much everywhere. Like I'm just scrolling through Reuters.
Okay, so what my theory would be, like, because it's impossible. You probably don't really have a society with 80% unemployment. What I have in my mind probably is that if you are employed for Hamas, it's it should be some kind of secret because the Israelis would target you. So you just sign as unemployed. It has to be some sort of manipulation. But I will grant you that the unemployment rate in Gaza is probably very, very high.
And like the food insecurity, something like 64%. What do you think that it is in Egypt?
In Egypt, it's probably about around 15 or 20. But again, that sounds like it can't possibly be like really the case.
So,
like, look at life expectancy, look at GDP. It's probably not.
Yes. So I think this is actually an interesting thing to focus on. Obviously, we're not going to resolve statistics. What's accurate, what's not, live right at this moment. But I think this is actually an interesting thing to highlight, which is that you see the material conditions of Gaza as not in accordance with what the kind of official statistics are. And
no, I think it depends on the statistics. It depends on what you can easily fabricate. I think it depends.
Sure. Okay.
Like I wouldn't argue with life expectancy.
But is there a conspiracy, Doran? I mean, Socratease.
No. It's not a conspiracy. It's just that these are like the government is run by an organization which benefits from portraying it as poor, and it is, and all the organizations are benefiting of it. Like take UNRWA, for example. UNRWA benefits from registering high food insecurity. That's how they get their funding.
So who do you believe? I mean, Socratease is pointing to some multitude of sources. You're saying they're all
I don't know. Like I will be.
What's the source of truth?
No, I didn't say that they're all incorrect. I said that I highly suspect these seem highly unlikely to me. But actually, I don't think it matters so much because I don't argue with the. Okay, I might argue with the material truth, but I don't argue with the psychological truth. And I think the psychological truth in this case is actually what matters.
Well, so can I actually dig into this because, so if it's the case that the material reality is really, really, really far away, from what the psychological reality is. So in Gaza, people believe we're extremely pushed down. You know, our conditions are extremely poor, and obviously it's because it's Israel's fault. But just focusing on what the actual reality is.
Yeah,
You know, we're in such a terrible state. We're, you know, in the kind of circumstance that the UN would say, oh, this is like an extreme emergency just for this population and their living conditions. If people believe this about themselves,
wait, we're talking
but it's
pre-October 7th, right?
pre-October 7th.
Okay.
But it's actually not the case. They're actually, you know, they're not in great circumstances. Their GDP isn't amazing, but you know, it's not extreme. It's just, you know, maybe kind of region consistent, but obviously much worse than Israel, which is one of the startup capitals of the world.
Yeah.
They have a lot of, I've even done some collaborations with biotech in companies that I worked at. Then you would say, well, a very, you know, reasonable understanding of why that could be the case is they're massively propagandized by their own population. There's these Hamas schools that are teaching them not only is it Israel's fault, but things are really bad right here.
I don't even know if I should call it propaganda by this point, you know? Maybe, you know, because now it's like this, it's a foundational narrative.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know?
We are victims. We're in dire circumstances. But
everyone
if it were
yeah.
the case, if it were the case that the material reality actually literally matches, it's these statistics, like what the true values are, not the official what's written down, or there's some little technical thing that we can say this when it's not really the fact of the matter. If those things actually did match, then whatever those specific things, okay, you know, maybe this is Israel's fault, but you don't see it that way. Those things might be different. But in terms of the material reality, you know, we are these people who live in these circumstances. If that were actually true, then that form of whatever that narrative is would actually not be a kind of self-victimization. That would simply be just an objective view of reality, right? That's everything I've said is just logically consistent, right? I haven't said anything.
Well, I don't think there's such a thing as an objective view of reality, but yeah,
Sure.
but I agree.
Yeah.
Mostly
So-
broadly, I would agree with you. But
So
I think that in order to, so what I would need to do to debunk your argument is to try to argue that you can, like, maybe the dispossession is not the, you know, the poor state of your lives is not the reason for your regression,
of course,
right? And to show that, I will need to imagine a hypothetical world in which there was not this, you know, poor state of affairs, but you would still be aggressive. And as we've said before, I can imagine such a world because it happened.